All right, good morning. How's everyone? So good. Hanging in there. I'm counting down the days to Halloween. I don't see you on Halloween, but I see you the day after Halloween. Hopefully you'll be here, right? That's always like the lowest attendance day, other than maybe the day before Thanksgiving. Right? The one is candy hungover. Candy. Is anyone dressing up for Halloween? Yeah.
I was about to ask you.
If I'm going to.
Yeah,
so last year I was an inflatable dinosaur, and it was so much fun, but I ran into everything. Like you can't see in that costume. So my kids thought it was amazing, but I've never fallen so many times. Like I ran into walls, I tripped over things. You can't, the window is like this big, and then you're massive, right? But it was fun. So I usually that's what it was last year. And then I usually go some like hybrid of like wearing all of my football gear. Like, so I'll wear like all of my football jerseys and like hats and socks and some football fan kind of thing. So my kids said I need to be more creative this year. I was like, I was a dino last year. How do I get more creative? Right. I'm tempted to come on Monday because I obviously have classes on Monday. It'd be funny to try and teach in that dinosaur costume. I don't know. I don't think anyone would be able to hear me. I wouldn't be able to see the computer. It'd be entertaining. I don't know. Oh, but is anyone else? Is anyone dressing up? Yeah? What are you going to be? Okay. I like it. Okay. Nice. That's fun. Anybody else? Anyone else? My oldest is going to be like a killer clown. Like she's got this crazy killer clown costume with like a big hammer. My middle is going to be she's like a cat witch. It's a witch with like a tail and ears. I don't know. And then my youngest by 60 seconds, right? Youngest is going to be like a sparkly dragon. We'll see. A killer clown to sparkly dragon, right? Still have two that are 8, so I'll enjoy those. The cute costumes. My oldest like wants to be all these really inappropriate ones. I'm like, yeah, that's not. No, you're not wearing that. No, you're 10. Slow down, right? She was picking things that are totally like Playboy bunny style, but doesn't know that. I'm like, no, not yet. Yeah. Oh, nice. Yes. Oh, yeah. Leia's still fun, but Chewie would be more fun, yeah, right? Yeah, right. I like it. That's fun. Either way, it's fun. I like it. All right. I want to talk about like at least there's 2 things I want to talk about a little bit before we get into chapter 9. The first, I want to talk about a little bit about the guest speaker, just kind of get your thoughts on that. And then I want to talk about the second part of the paper, which pushed back to Tuesday so that you would have a little bit more time. I didn't want you to have it due today and us to have not talked about it as much as I would have liked to. So hopefully that gives you a little extra time and you're happy about that. But let's talk about the speaker first. And this is between us. Like, I'm not going to say anything to them, but I'm just curious, did you think it was helpful? Did you like it, not like it? Or what are your, any thoughts about the speakers and their presentation? Anybody have any reaction? Is it good? Good idea? Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, good. I'm glad you learned something. I think at the very least, the resources that they share with you, the phone numbers, and the numbers you can text, hold on to those. I can't think how many times I've given them out to somebody, and it's been helpful to have like some kind of resource. Anyone else? Other thoughts? Yeah. Over there. Sorry, I'm not going to hear you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, shows other people that I never know what we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. Put that on an application. Put it on a resume. If you're applying to a school to transfer, put it on there. If you're applying to a job, put it on there, right? Anything that you can do to set yourself apart, that always looks good. So definitely put that on there. I know the role plays are awful. Right? Role plays are awkward. They're so awkward. Like, here's your scenario, go. Be trouble, right? Like, and get into it. I know that role plays are the worst. Thank you for being good sports and doing that. I really understand the point, the point being to get that question out. And obviously, if this is somebody you're going to recognize the signs in them most likely, right? If it's a friend or a family member or a partner, you're going to see these warning signs. You know them well enough that it's not like you have to warm up to it as much as if it was like a random scenario. And I don't know, for me, this is something that is definitely, I have dealt with in many capacities. I've dealt with suicidality as an instructor. I've walked many students over to the health center in my 12 years here. I dealt with it as a counselor, which was probably the most intense of any capacity, just because clients would be suicidal and I would worry that they would come back the next session. I would be so stressed about it, and we'd make pacts and we'd make promises and we talk about it. But, I'm not there at 2 a.m. when they're in crisis. And it just always made me so scared that somebody would take their life. I won't lie. It was probably one of the bigger factors in me stepping away from counseling, because I had so many clients who would be suicidal and it just weighed on me so much. I felt so responsible for their well-being, which to a degree is good, but to a degree isn't the best either. You have to have really good boundaries that way. But this is something that personally, I always feel like it's better to overreact than underreact, right? Somebody will forgive you for caring too much and maybe going too far and reacting too strongly, but can you forgive yourself for not doing enough? That's always just been my personal philosophy with suicidality. And they said that people won't get mad at you. I don't know if I agree with that. I've had people get mad at me, right? I've had students be mad at me. I've had clients be mad at me, and oftentimes it's a temporary anger. Like they'll forgive it later and move on. Like I was mad because it was something that I was feeling and I didn't want anyone to know. But I've definitely had people get angry. I still think it's better to overreact. For me, I just never want to have that moment of like, I wish I had done more. And so I've always just kind of taken it maybe a little too seriously. So that's my philosophy. Because you have a thought?
I had a couple questions. You kind of answered one of them. The second one was like, as a counselor, how do you approach like someone when they finally date?
Yeah.
Having those thoughts, like, because I know I've been on like, because I think you're going to get a reporter once you're like a therapist, right? So how do you,
and as an instructor, right?
Yeah. So how do you go about that?
Yeah. So you have to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, I'm sure you all know people. My mother-in-law is one of these people. She says, I'm going to kill myself over everything. Right? Like she burned dinner last night. She's like, I might as well just kill myself. And I'm like, Mom, dude, I just come from like training that day. I'm like, no, we don't say that stuff. Like, stop it. And she doesn't mean it. Like, she's not going to kill herself. She's just dramatic. Right. And drives me nuts because I want to take it seriously. Right. But as a therapist, when somebody says that they're suicidal, typically the next step is to talk that through with them. Right. Like, well, when you say that, like, what do you mean? Like, what are you thinking? Where are you at? Do you have a plan? Do you have the means to execute it? And sometimes if people have, if you get the feeling that they're serious, they have a plan, they have the means, they are thinking about it actively, it might be the case where you have to have them committed for their own safety. That's kind of the extreme end. Typically what you do is you make a no suicide contract. It sounds silly, but there's literally a form that is like available for therapists, and you can kind of customize it, and you make a contract with your client. And it's the silliest thing, but sometimes having a contract that they've signed and it has steps of what they're going to do should they feel suicidal. Sometimes that's enough to like hold them over to the next session. Mm-hmm. And then oftentimes you want to check in with that person. So rather than waiting a whole week until you see them, you might give them a call the next day and be like, hey, I was just thinking about you. How are you doing? Just kind of checking in. Make sure you give them lots of resources. Oftentimes making sure they have a plan. So if this escalates, what are you going to do? And like giving them concrete things like, okay, you're going to go do X because that's going to help maybe pull you out of it. Okay. But even then, I mean, I at least 10 times, maybe more, made suicide contracts or no suicide contracts with clients. And I just held my breath and hoped that they would be okay.
It still stress count.
Yeah.
And like, it's a weird position because you don't want to like break their trust and go,
right.
We have them committed and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, for your own benefit and like own well-being, I feel like
yeah. And it's tough. Like, I mean, a lot of you knew people, a lot of you raised your hand. A lot of you know people who have either attempted, completed, or maybe thought about being suicidal. The brutal thing is if somebody has made up their mind to do it, it doesn't matter. It might not matter what you do, right? And so that's a really hard thing to accept, especially as somebody's like therapist, right? That maybe it doesn't matter what I do. That doesn't mean you don't try, but it can be a hard one to accept. And honestly, like I loved counseling. It was heavy and hard, but I enjoyed it. I just found that teaching was so much lighter and more fun. I could talk about football and food and whatever I want. You know, I could talk about churros and you all have to listen, or you could leave, I guess, and drop, but you have to listen, right? You have no choice. It's not appropriate in therapy. So it's a tough one. And I mean, I grew up with a mom who attempted suicide multiple times. And I remember as a kid being afraid that that would happen, you know? And so I think for me that had too many like past triggers. It was too much anxiety. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. And so, you know, I've had friends who are suicidal, like I'm sure many of you have. Think you can only do what you can do, but having those resources, you know, giving clients phone numbers and people to text, and who are you going to call at 2 a.m. if you're in this spot? Yeah. Because it's obviously not going to be me, right? And then just hoping that, yeah, it wasn't my favorite. Yeah, right. And I've had quite a few students over the years come to me and be like, I'm suicidal. And, you know, hoping that when they don't show up to class the next day, oh my God, are they okay? You know, it's all I can think, you know, and it's tough when you care about someone, whether it's as a friend or a student or a coworker, like you want them to be okay. Right. So it's a tough topic. And I'm glad that they were able to come in and talk about it. I think that it's awkward to do the role plays, but important to have those steps. Those phone numbers, again, I think are really, really helpful. And if you have to err on one side or the other, better to overreact than underreact, at least in my opinion. Are there any other thoughts or questions or comments? Anything else about the QPR stuff? Definitely know what QPR stands for, right? Question, persuade, refer. People oftentimes think respond, but refer. Right. The idea is that it's not necessarily your responsibility, but you want to get them to somebody who can help them. Right. So rather than responding, you're referring them to somebody else and hoping that they can help. Right. Make sure that you hold on to that stuff that they gave you. I posted the presentation. So if you ever want to go back and reference it, it is on Canvas, just like any other lecture. I recorded it and posted it. The other thing I want to talk about before we go to chapter 9 is your paper, right? So the second part of the paper is due on Tuesday by 11:59 p.m. Okay, so for the second part of the paper, if we click on modules, I just want to remind you that the instructions are here, and there's a bunch of sample papers that are here as well, if at any point you want to see how other people approach this paper. But if we go all the way down, here's part 2. And let's take a look at some of the requirements. I want to just make sure you know what I'm looking for with this part of the paper. So part 2 right here is worth 40 points. And it's called outline and source. Okay, so the big thing here is I'm looking for 2 big things. The first thing I'm going to look for when I open your paper, the very first thing, is that you have an academic source. I posted a couple of videos on here, and I would really recommend watching them. You don't have to, but I've recommended it, I think, a couple of times now. If you look here where all of our stuff is virtual guest speakers, I guess if I make it available to you, that would be better. There's a library resources video, and we have someone in our library who made a little resource video for me, right? And I posted it on here so that you could have access to it. She talks about academic versus non-academic sources if you need a little bit more on that. She shows you how to go into the library database and find articles. But an academic source is something that's peer reviewed. So this should be like a book, a journal article. Really great thing that you could all use is the DSM-5. That is a peer-reviewed academic source, and it has all of the criteria for the disorders in it. Every single one of you could use the DSM. Just make sure it's the 5th one, right? Don't use an old DSM. But this would be a great academic source. The academic source is worth 10 points. 10 of 40. This is the first thing I'm going to look for. If you don't have a source, you lose 10 points right off the bat. Okay, so please make sure that you do have an academic source. You need the citation information, but it doesn't need to be in any particular format. Okay, so it could just needs to be there. Yeah.
Same source and citations part 1.
So part 1 was just your show information, right? So And on the final paper, you don't need to have it right now, but you could always put it in there if you want to. This is just what you're going to be using to help you write your paper. You're going to need something that tells you all the criteria for the disorder that you think your character has, or the causes or the treatment. So again, this could be an article, it could be a book, it could be the DSM, cannot be our textbook. It needs to be beyond that. Any .com, .org, .gov, those are not peer-reviewed sources. So don't use like Wikipedia and be like, nailed it, right? No, it's only, it's not an academic source. Yeah. Yeah.
Those databases.
Yeah, and if you watch this, she actually shows you specifically catered to this assignment. So we've been working together for a while. So she made this video for me related to this assignment. So I think it'll be really helpful. You can see she's looking at bipolar and related disorders. Like she even used examples from us. And then down here, I have one from the Writing Center on APA formatting. Again, specifically catered to this assignment. She shows you how to cite the DSM, how to use like basic APA stuff, which you don't need yet, but we'll talk about it more before the final paper is due. So if you were to watch one of these, I would really recommend this one, especially if you're like, I don't know where to find an academic source or what that means. She covers that. And I don't think this is overly long. 23 minutes, that's not too bad. But Danielle is one of our librarians. She's amazing. And she covered all of that and was kind enough to send it to me and let me post it for all of you. Did you have a Psych? Yeah.
So just to clarify, so the academic source, you just use it, like say, all right, say you want to use the DSM file.
Yeah.
You just like follow the prompt and use that to help you.
Yeah, so what you would be using that source for is to write your final paper, right? So you don't necessarily need to cite it or anything now. This is just like a progress toward your final paper. But when we get to the final paper, we'll talk a little bit more about what I'm looking for with that. But you're going to need some kind of source, right? So let's say you think your character has bipolar disorder, right? What are the criteria in order to have bipolar? You're going to need to get that from somewhere. The DSM would be a great source. An article would work, or even a book that you find on bipolar disorder. So it's going to help you with writing your paper. Or when you're talking about causes and treatments for bipolar disorder, you're going to be getting that information from somewhere. So you probably will need to utilize our library, which you can do at home. And she shows you how to do that as well in that video. So if I go back to the instructions really quick, did you have a question while I'm getting there? Nope. Yeah. Yeah. So this part of the paper, I'm not worried about formatting at all. What I'm worried about more is content. So you have a source, give me all the citation information, but it doesn't need to be in any format yet. And then the bulk of the paper, I'm looking for progress toward your final paper, right? And this needs to be about 2 to 3 pages long. But I don't really care about the formatting. A lot of people at this point will give me bullets. And that's totally fine, right? Like maybe you have examples from your show where you're like, this would be a great example of the disorder I think they have. Or maybe you've narrowed it down to like 2 or 3 disorders and you have some thoughts on that, but you're not sure which. And you want to list the criteria for those disorders so you can start thinking about it. Sometimes people will write out their summary and then they'll have some thoughts afterward, you know, and that's fine too. In general, more than the formatting, more than like a well-written out paper, I'm just looking to see that you're making progress. I don't want you to be waiting till all the way until like November, the end of November when this paper is due to do all of it. I'm trying to get you started now. Yeah. Disorder? Yeah, ideally not more than 2, right? So I would say 1 or 2 would be appropriate. If you think there's something else going on, you could take like a paragraph to talk about it. But 1 or 2 is probably the most you would want to do. It's pretty rare for people to have more than 2 disorders. Okay. Yeah, and so what a lot of people will do is pick the main disorder that you think is going on, and then take a paragraph or 2 to talk about all the other stuff that maybe doesn't quite fit into it. And I've seen that work out really well. Remember, as I said, there's those sample papers. A few people did that. They're like, okay, I think they have bipolar disorder, but there's this other stuff going on, and maybe it's this, and kind of take a paragraph to talk about it, and then you would be in good shape because you've still talked about it, but you haven't given yourself so much to cover that it's overwhelming. Yeah.
How many pages were there?
The final paper is 5 to 6 pages, not including the title page and the references page. So those which are both incredibly short. So the bulk of the paper is like 5 to 6 pages. The more you give me here, the more feedback I can give you, right? So if you have thoughts or have questions or give me more of like a rough draft, I can give you more feedback than if you just give me bullets. But at any point before the final paper is due, you can give me a rough draft. I'd be happy to look it over and tell you if you're missing anything or if you need to add somewhere. I'm always happy to do that for you. The final paper isn't due until November 29th, so after Thanksgiving. So anytime before like Thanksgiving break, you could send me a rough draft. I'd be happy to look it over and give you feedback. Okay, but for this, more than anything, I just want to see that you're thinking about it. You're getting examples from your show. Maybe, get yourself to write a little section, write the summary, or start talking about your character, or start narrowing down the disorders. So big thing again, right off the bat, 10 points is that academic source. So don't skip out on that. If you go down to the bottom here, you can see my rubric. If you give me a non-academic source, you'll get 5 points. No source, you'll get 0. Right. And that really out of 40, that will really hurt your score. So please try and make sure that you get that source in there. And the rest of it is just progress toward that end paper. Okay. And you can still, if you're sitting here going like, I hate my character, I regret my life decisions, right? You can still change characters. Now would be a good time to do it before you do all this. Right. Once you've done all this, you can still change, but then you have to go back and do it again. And that's, you don't want to do more work than you have to. Yeah. Just one. So pick one source. Again, all of you could use the DSM. That's probably the most commonly used source. A lot of people will find a book or like an article, but the DSM is going to give you all the causes and criteria. And you can use more than that. Let's say you really want to use Wikipedia, or Internet Movie Database for your summary. You can use a non-academic source on top of an. That's fine to have more than one, but you only need one. Okay. And usually people will add another one. It's not uncommon for me to see like 2 or 3, but you only need one. And again, look over these. If you're like, I'm so overwhelmed by this paper, I don't know how to format it. I don't even know what you're looking for. Look at these, right? These sample papers are ones that got A's. They're all formatted like really nicely. They'll give you a good clue of how to approach the final paper. But for now, just some progress toward that final paper is all I'm looking for. Okay. Any other questions? I feel like if I didn't do this part, everyone would wait till November 25th or 28th to start on it. So this is my way of trying to help you to get there a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Is there any spoil?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's totally fine. So you're going to be writing a summary. Make sure the summary isn't the focus of your paper, right? So just a couple of paragraphs. I've seen a lot of the shows many of you are doing, but not all of them. And that's totally fine. Yeah. And let's say your character dies in the show, right? And that happens, right? In some of the movies some of you picked. You could talk about how could you have treated them if they didn't die, right? Maybe you don't know causes, but you can speculate. These are common causes for this disorder. I'm kind of speculating that this is maybe what happened. So you're welcome to kind of add your own twist. As I said, I've had people argue really creative stuff, right? Like Ariel last semester, somebody talked about Ariel being a hoarder, which was quite funny. I could see that for sure. Got all her stuff right in her cave. And then somebody arguing that Harry Potter had schizophrenia and he thought he was this really important guy because he was abused and lived under the stairs. Super creative. You don't have to go that far, but feel free to kind of put your own spin on your character. Anything else for now? I'll check in with you again on Tuesday, but just start working on it. Don't leave it all the way till next week, if you can, right? And that'll be due on Tuesday. Did I hit it? Yes. Okay. So otherwise, let's get back into this. So you finished chapter 6 and 7 with the video that I sent you, and then we had the guest speaker for chapter 7. Chapter 8 was way earlier. We went out of order. So what we have left before our next exam is chapters 9 and 10, eating disorders and substance disorders. And there's actually only a couple of disorders in each chapter, but they're definitely common ones, right? Eating disorders affect a lot of people. A lot of people struggle with these. We'll talk about anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. So the 3 kind of main ones, and then some causes and treatments. And with all of these disorders, we're looking at disorders where there are disturbances in eating. And as I mentioned, these are very common. And the hardest part about these disorders is they're notoriously difficult to treat. Think how often you have to eat, right? How often we're hungry. This is just like a reoccurring thing that comes up for people who struggle with these disorders, which can make it difficult to treat and to not relapse from. But with all of these, a person is eating or refusing to eat in order to satisfy like a psychological or psychic need rather than a physical one. So you're not listening to your body, or maybe you're not even aware of your body's signals anymore, right? You're full, but you keep on eating to the point of being sick because you can't stop. You're absolutely starving, but you don't eat because you don't want to put anything in your body and gain weight from it. Right? Those are very common things that happen with these disorders. And I think what makes it so tricky is our relationship with food is complicated. For a lot of people, it can be quite complicated. Really simple example, right? How many of you eat when you're bored? By show of hands. I'm so guilty of this, right? Like I ate an entire container of goldfish, you know, the little like cracker goldfish yesterday while I was grading. I didn't even realize, I was just like mindlessly, and then I reached in, I'm like, oh, it's empty. Oops, right, gone, right? I just mindlessly eating them. How many of you go out to eat to celebrate something good happening? A lot of you. Anyone eat when they're sad? Right? Pull out the ice cream. That's the stereotype, right? I won't go to a movie unless there's popcorn. Like, why go to a movie if there's no popcorn, candy, and soda? The holidays are all about food to me, right? Food is a big part of a lot of things for a lot of people, right? It's much more complicated than just I'm hungry, so I eat, right? And so what happens is people develop complicated relationships with food, and it can make it a little bit tricky. And so what you often see is people have signs of eating disorder kind of behavior, but they might just not quite be there, right? Maybe you have warning signs, but you don't have the full-blown disorder. Just keep in mind that all of us have a complicated relationship with food. Most of us will binge at some point or not eat even though we're hungry. That doesn't mean you have a disorder, but when it's recurrent, when it happens all the time and it's causing you health issues and social issues and so on, that's when it starts to become disorder. Now, I have a video that I want to share with you. There's a lot of great documentaries about eating disorders, a couple of them that are newer, like To the Bone on Netflix. But what I want to do, I mean, you could just see how thin so many of these women are that they showed, and yet, you know, feeling like they are overweight, and that fear of gaining weight, really restrictive eating. Those are all elements that tend to be so common with this disorder. And so we'll talk about the main disorders, anorexia, bulimia, and then binge eating. And we'll start with anorexia, which I wrote some stuff up here, and I'll cover it so in case it's hard to read. But anorexia is probably the most common of the three eating disorders. And with this one, what we see is a disorder where people have an intense fear of gaining weight and a distorted body image. There's this kind of pursuit of extreme thinness. So there are three main criteria in order to be diagnosed with anorexia. The first one is there's a refusal to maintain a, quote, normal body weight for somebody's height and age. So obviously there's a whole range of what is normal in terms of weight, and we don't take into account like body size and like bone size and then so on. But there is kind of a chart that doctors use that gives you a typical range that people should be within for their height and their age. And so what we see is that somebody who has anorexia is less than 85% of where they should be. So they're very underweight by definition, right? They're at less than 85% of their expected weight for their height and age. The second part, B, is there's an intense fear of gaining weight. And this is where the restricted eating comes in. Oftentimes people with anorexia will eat very, very little because they're afraid that anything they put into their body is going to cause them to gain weight. And so oftentimes this individual is literally starving themselves, right? Oftentimes ignoring being hungry because they're afraid to eat anything and gain weight. So intense fear of gaining weight is B. And then C, and this is common with both disorders, both of the big ones, there's a disturbance in your view of your body. Another way of putting this is there's an undue influence of weight on self-esteem. So your self-esteem and your self-worth is connected directly to your weight. And You see this in the film that I just showed you, right? The young woman draws a picture of herself, like a silhouette of herself on butcher paper, and then they trace her. And you can see the image that she drew of herself was quite a bit larger than her actual frame. That's very common, people viewing themselves as much more overweight or heavier than they actually are, even though they're very underweight. And then you saw her right on there, you know, help me, abdominoplasty, need to tone, right? Kind of all these things of obsessing about weight and appearance. And so again, refusing to maintain a normal body weight, intense fear of gaining weight, and then that disturbance in view of yourself, in view of your body. And this is way more common in women. Ages 14 to 18 is the most common. And that's true of all of the first two eating disorders that we're going to talk about. This can obviously occur in men, and the rates in men have actually gone up considerably. But sometimes what we see in men is that they, because the ideal beauty norms for men are a little different than women, beauty equals thinness, culturally, stereotypically. Being thin is attractive. For men, it's oftentimes being bigger and more muscular that's attractive. So sometimes you see men going the opposite direction of trying to bulk up and get bigger and more muscular in order to seem attractive. And like, obviously these beauty norms change quite a bit over the years and over time. But this is way more common in women than in men. Yeah.
It's always like, oh, gain weight, it's not like never.
Yeah.
Really
bulk up. Yeah.
That's like boring. I would gain weight and just easily like half.
Yeah.
Even half, like, it was insane.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know.
I'm glad you shared that, you know, and there's a lot of pressure, sports and a lot of like the performing arts, right? That you see a lot of this, like people who are wrestlers or boxers have to be in a certain, you know, weight class in order to qualify. Football players, they want you to be big and bulky, right? Unless you're like a wide receiver.
So I play football and strict wrestling. All right, cut all this weight.
Oh no.
Get rid of all this stuff. So
bulk up, cut down, right? Yeah. That's brutal, right? Or people who are dancers or performers, you know, you have to be thin, you have to have a certain body type, gymnasts, right? Ice skaters, right? There's so many different like sporting and performance related things where weight is like an expectation that is there, right? And so we see this mainly in women, but it can obviously occur in men as well. And it starts to take a toll, right? It takes a toll on you physically, takes a toll on your health. You know, the women in there were talking about not having menstrual cycles, hair can fall out, your bones become brittle because you're not eating, you're not getting those nutrients that your body needs in order to function. Bulimia is similar, but it has a slightly different presentation. So let me erase the more right up for bulimia. The last criteria is the same, so I'll leave that here. So for bulimia, or bulimia nervosa, the full name. Sometimes this is called binge purge syndrome because it follows this pattern of people binging, eating way too much, and then purging or compensating and getting rid of that food in some way so that they don't gain weight. So it's a very cyclical disorder. So the first is that people have recurrent episodes of binge eating. Binge eating is when you eat an incredible amount of food within a short period of time, right? And the way that they define this is it's kind of comical because this is so different from person to person. But they say within a 2-hour period, eating more than most would eat. That is so subjective. What I can eat in a 2-hour period might be totally different than what you can eat in a 2-hour period, right? Or just across the room, right? So it's kind of subjective, but the idea is that you're eating an incredible amount of food, more than you would typically eat. It's kind of like a mass consumption, and you have a lack of control during the binge. You can't stop, right? It almost feels out of your control to stop eating. Now, again, I would guarantee that every single one of you in this room has binged at some point. Doing this once in a while, not a problem. I plan to binge like mad on Halloween. I'm going to eat more candy than probably most people in the world would eat. Probably more than all of you will eat together. I'm planning for, I've been building up to it all month long. I'm proud of myself. I'm ready, right? I have this huge cauldron of candy. I'm ready to go, right? That doesn't mean I have an eating disorder, right? Maybe on that one day I eat to the point where I'm sick and I don't feel so great. But that's one incident. right? So again, doing this every now and then, you eat way too much pizza, right? You eat way too much food somewhere, right? It's not a huge deal, but when you're doing it recurrently and it's happening over and over again, that's where it starts to become problematic. Then you have compensatory behaviors. To prevent weight gain. So you eat a whole bunch and then you do something to compensate for it so that you don't gain weight. What are some ways that people might compensate for a binge, right? In order to counter a binge? Anyone think of something you might do? Yeah. Throwing it up, probably the most common. Do you have a different one? Yeah, that could be another way, right? That you have a huge binge and then you starve yourself and you don't eat anything for days. Yeah. Yeah, excessively working out, right? So I'm going to go work out for like 5 hours to burn off those calories and then some. There's one more that tends to be kind of common. Anyone know? Yeah. Laxatives, right? That's the other big one, right? So the idea is that people compensate for the binge to do something to cause them to lose weight. So throwing up, exercising, starving yourself, laxatives, those are the really common ones that people might do. Something so that you don't gain weight from all of that food that you took in. The other thing is that this has to happen, the binges and compensatory behaviors, I'm just going to abbreviate that, are at least 2 times a week for at least 3 months. Oftentimes it's quite a bit more than that, right? But people have binges and compensatory behaviors at least twice a week for a period of 3 months or more. And then finally, D is the same as the last one, that there's a disturbance in your view of your body, an undue influence of weight on your self-evaluation. So this has a very cyclical nature. People overeat, they binge, then they purge it, right? And then they binge and then they purge, right? And then there's this disturbance in the view of your body, but you do not, by definition, have to be underweight to have bulimia like you do with anorexia. Yeah.
So if someone is you like losing your practice and constitution,
yeah,
and say they waited but now they're something like that, we can do it 2 times a week. Are they just in contact with me? Is there something else like that, or is it still?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you asked that because it's very rare that people fit perfectly into anorexia, bulimia, right? Because what you might end up with is somebody who has anorexia-like behaviors, but they're not underweight. So they technically don't meet the criteria because they're not at the right weight to be so, but it's pretty clear that that's where they're at. Or they have bulimia, but then they alternate between binges and purges and then stretches of time where they starve themselves. Right. And so what can happen, and this is true of any disordered group, we have what's called NOS, not otherwise specified. Within every group of disorders, depression, NOS, eating disorder, NOS, right? Personality disorder, NOS, right? Basically what it means is you don't fit neatly into one of the diagnoses, but it's obvious that there's something going on there. So maybe if someone has a blend of bulimia and anorexia, we might say eating disorder, not otherwise specified, because they have a pattern of a little bit of both, but there's clearly an eating disorder. They just don't fit into one of them neatly. So I'm glad you asked that. It happens a lot with substance disorders, with eating disorders, with anxiety, with mood. You get someone who clearly has a problematic pattern, but they don't meet the criteria neatly. Right. And so within every group, we have that kind of specification to account for that individual, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Like disordered eating be part of like NOS? Or is that like another?
So just having disordered eating would just mean that it could mean either that you're on the path to a disorder, like maybe you have risk factors or red flags and that your eating is somewhat disordered, or it could just be someone referring to having an eating disorder and they're not specifying. It's hard because we have like the common language and then there's like the diagnostic language, right? Kind of like we have Munchausen's, but it's actually called factitious disorder. Or sometimes we say manic depression, but it's called bipolar, or sociopath, antisocial. So it could mean a variety of things. Traditionally, these are the actual disorders. And someone who has disordered eating might have one of them, or it might be that they have NOS. It can kind of be used in a lot of different ways, which is frustrating at times because you're not sure what they're referring to. Very close to this, binge eating disorder. So with binge eating disorder, and I have the criteria up here, people binge, but they don't purge. Okay, so this individual would eat an extreme amount of food, but they do not get rid of it. And so oftentimes this person gains a lot of weight as a result of the binges. All right, so what you see here, somebody has binge eating episodes that include 3 or more of these. Unusually rapid eating, so they're eating quite quickly. Eating large amounts of food without physical hunger. So even though you're not hungry, you keep eating. Again, that lack of control. Eating until you're uncomfortably full. Oftentimes eating alone because you're embarrassed. Closet eating, we sometimes call that. And then feelings of disgust, depression, or severe guilt after a binge eating episode. Kim, back to Kim. You missed Kim, right? You missed me talking about Kim, I'm sure. She came up like 3 times in our house this weekend. I'm not sure why, right? My kids really want to know, because we don't talk about Kim. Of course, that's all they want to know about, right? Is Kim. Like, why? Let's not talk about her. But when I first met Kim, she weighed 340 pounds, right? 340, I want to say, give or take. Very large individual. And she very much had binge eating disorder. I never saw her eat, ever. But she clearly was eating, right? Like, she just never ate in front of anyone. She would eat privately. And I remember my partner and I watched her house. This was really early in the relationship when we were still talking to her. And literally in her closet, in the drawers, was like lined bar after bar of candy bars. And like, she's like, I got to show you this. Just like, you'll find it so interesting as a psychology person, right? And she takes me in the closet, opens the drawer, and it's like 500 Snickers bars. And I felt like I had like walked into my personal heaven or something. It's like, Snickers, oh, like, I want them all. She's like, don't touch them. She knows exactly how many are in here, right? She knows where they are, how many there are, just drawer after drawer of candy and food, literally hidden away. She would lock herself away and eat in private because she was embarrassed of eating in front of other people because of her weight. And she later had a gastric bypass surgery and now weighs like a ridiculous, like quite a bit less, like 110 maybe. She had lost an incredible amount of weight from having her stomach bypassed and lost it too quickly, like in an unhealthy way. Her hair fell out. It was really, you know, like an impact on her body. But that's really common with this disorder. People tend to eat alone because they're embarrassed of these binges that they have. And it has to occur on average at least once a week for 3 months, but there's no pattern of like compensatory behavior. There's no compensating. And so again, this individual oftentimes gains a lot of weight because they're not getting rid of it in any way. Yeah. You're just trying to establish a pattern. Because again, a lot of us will binge like when we're stressed, when we're, you know, dealing with something, maybe you're really hungry and you just don't stop, right? And so what the idea is that it's not a one-time thing, that it's something that's it's ongoing, rather than like more of an isolated incident. And for a lot of people, it's way more. I mean, these criteria of like 2 times a week, this is often like 2-3 times a day is more common. But we have kind of a baseline, at least that, in order to qualify. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love Thanksgiving, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like we're ball.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that helps, right? My kids joke that Thanksgiving was made for me. They're like, it's all about food and football. Like it's your day. I'm like, you're right. It is my day. I love Thanksgiving. I love Halloween more, but Thanksgiving, oh, I look forward to that all year, right? We have a lot of like things that are revolving around food, right? It's a big part of a lot of events and celebrations and holidays and just cultures, right? People come together over food. It's just such a big part of our lives. And so I think that also accounts for that a little bit too. It's not just on a certain day. It's recurring. It's happening a lot. And just something interesting to think about. I have a video that I'll show you here in a moment. There are a vision, but I mean, it's definitely, it meets some of these criteria, right? I mean, they're definitely binging. You can easily say that. And a lot of them afterward do make themselves kind of purge all of that out because it's not good to have, 60 something hot dogs sitting in your stomach. I don't think I could eat 60 hot dogs in a year let alone 10 minutes, but they do. I mean, what do you think? Disorder, not a disorder? Are you concerned? Are you not? Any thoughts or reactions about these guys? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Yeah. I'll go over there and then I'll go to you. Okay. Okay. So it's not impacting their life. It's not every day, right? So those things would be important to note. Yeah.
I like kind of that, like most of them are like speaking or like
Yeah.
it's not like what you expect for it.
Mhm.
So like I don't know how they do it. Maybe it was like too unhealthy because or something like that, or maybe it's too or maybe they just need like that's like the one time they eat.
Sure.
But somehow it's not that.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
My question is like, do these people train for
Yeah.
this kind of things? Should we like be ready for this? If so, and if they're trained for this and still stay like that, then it's their like
Yeah.
how comfortable they are, like eating all that.
They train intensely. So there was a whole documentary made about Kobayashi, who's probably one of the best like competitive eaters. I mean, he is absolutely ripped, this guy. Like he like pulls up his shirt. He's got like, I don't know, like a 48 pack. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He has so many muscles. This guy has just got an incredible metabolism. He works out all the time. He trains and eating like this. It's just like his whole life, right? The whole documentary made about him. It's really interesting to watch. Forget the name. But yeah.
Like just, you know, they're getting used to like throwing it back up afterwards.
Mhm.
And, like, there's a lot.
Yeah, a lot to unpack, right? And there is a whole range between these folks. Like some of them are, you know, more invested in it than others, maybe probably train more than others. There's also a lot of money involved in this. They win a lot of money for competing in these competitions and fame, right? So the motivation maybe is a little bit different than like this stuff, right? The motivation might be a little bit different. You know, so I think those are all things to keep in mind, just like we were talking about with sports, right? Like, you know, are you losing weight and gaining weight for yourself, or is it because you have to for a sport? And at what point does it cross over? Yeah, I mean, so it's complicated, right? Food can be complicated. I competed in a pie eating competition once, right? It was a lot of fun. It was on the 4th of July too. I ate 4 chocolate cream pies and then threw them up because I felt sick. Not on purpose, I just felt awful. Now I don't like chocolate cream pie anymore. Like it ruined it for me for life. But I mean, I didn't train for it. I just went into it. You know, I was like, okay, sure, why not? I'll do it. It was at a park. I'm like, I can do that. But I mean, these people train incredibly. I mean, there are a lot of people who eat strange stuff on social media for attention and for views and for money. I mean, there's whole channels on YouTube where you can pay people to eat bizarre foods, right? And watch them do it, watch them get sick from it. It's just kind of a strange cultural phenomenon. You know, there's videos where you can watch people eat so you don't have to eat alone. Like there's so many strange things on social media with eating. You know, and so looking at the motivation behind it, how often is it happening? All of those things are important to consider. But I don't think it's clear cut, right? I mean, I think I would worry a little bit, but it seems like there's a very specific motivation. Was there another hint? Yeah.
Like some people like something. Is that like psychological, or is it like their taste bud stuff?
Oh, in terms of like food preferences? Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is conditioning. Like you learn what you like and don't like from like a young age. And I think some of it is just your taste buds. So there is definitely a psychological element to it. Like if any of you have ever gotten food poisoning, right, then you tend to hate that food for a very long time because it's been conditioned to make you feel sick. Like the second I smelled chili, my mouth waters in that bad way because I've got violently sick from chili. Was it this class I was telling you my mother-in-law has food poisoned me like countless times? Yeah, she's making enchiladas for me tonight. You know, I'm scared. Pray for me, right? I mean, just she like does an incredible amount of like, she's made me sick so many times that like she's affected my food preferences, you know, by conditioning me to be sick from certain foods. So I think it's a little bit of both, like biology and conditioning. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you ate so much ham, it seems like way cheaper.
Yeah, it's free. Yeah.
So if you ate so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
It's just not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've ever worked at a restaurant, like which I'm sure many of you have done at some point, or maybe like you visited all the time. I worked at Subway as one of my first jobs. I couldn't eat Subway for like 10 years after working there. Just the smell of the bread made me feel sick. Like just because I smelled it like every day, all the time. And I ate so much of it because it was free. You know, you can definitely kill a food by being around it too much. And in that case, it's very much conditioning based. Yeah.
I searched up the record of dogs. Joey Chestnut ate 10,000 calories.
Wow.
Like average of 1,000.
2,000 a day, right?
Yeah.
As you're like, yeah.
Actually, last year, while he ended up winning, but while the contest was going on, the protesters stood next to him, he body slammed him, and then kept eating. So,
wow. Okay. 10,000 calories in hot dogs.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hot dogs, right? I mean, they said they eat 66 hot dogs in 10 minutes. That's intense, right? I don't know. I'm not a huge like fan of hot dogs to begin with. I could never eat that many of them. Like one is plenty. But yeah, I mean, it's intense. It's interesting, right? But Joey Chestnut, Kobayashi, they're by far the most famous of those individuals. Sure. Let's talk about causes for our last bit that we have here. Causes of eating disorders, very much multidimensional. Okay, what that means is the more of these that you have, the more likely you are to get an eating disorder, to have an eating disorder. And again, remember that you can have kind of problematic eating patterns without having a disorder. And maybe you're on like a path to it, or we have to be concerned a little bit. It doesn't mean you're doomed to end up with one, but there are psychological factors, interpersonal factors, biological ones, and then cultural and societal factors. Psychological factors, right, are looking at things related to like your functioning, right, your mental well-being. Very common for people with eating disorders to have low self-esteem, right, to struggle with issues related to inadequacy, anxiety, depression, mood disturbances. So there's a lot of correlations with mood disorders, anxiety disorders. A lot of it is thought to be related to control. So a lot with eating disorders, I can control what goes in my body. I can control what comes out of my body. And maybe it relates to something happening in their life where they were out of control, right? And so that's relatively common that you see eating disorders not being so much about someone's weight as it is about like trying to establish control over things that they feel out of control with. So again, self-esteem, inadequacy, anxiety, mood, those are all common psychological factors. The second one is huge, interpersonal factors, the people in our lives. Every family has a culture around food. My family is obsessed with dessert. I'm sure that's not shocking to any of you with how much I talk about dessert, but my family, we will get cakes for no reason. Like it's Tuesday, let's have a cake, right? Like, why not? And I remember when my partner joined like our family and we like, my parents bought a cake. Like, and she's like, why are we having cake? Is it somebody's birthday? I'm like, no, they're celebrating you. You're here. We got a cake. She's like, that's weird. I'm like, no, it's Tuesday. We're having a cake. What? Like, why is that weird? You're weird. Right? Like, it was totally like so normal to my parents. Like, we bought a cake. Why not? Right? The people at the bakery at Vaughn's know me well, right? I buy a lot of cakes. But every family has that culture. Her family has a lot of people with diabetes in it. They don't eat a lot of desserts. I mean, I've conformed and changed them over time a little bit. Like they eat much more dessert now. I've fixed them. But every family has that difference, right? And then the things that your parents and family say to you, right? Do your parents look at you and say stuff like, hey, you shouldn't eat that? Are you really going to eat all of that? You probably really don't need all of that. Or you better clean that plate, right? Like the messages that we get sent, right? From our family members, from partners, from friends. Your partner has a picture of you on their phone or like in their wallet or whatever of when you were super thin rather than how you are now. Those messages that other people give you can very easily shape the way that you view yourself and maybe make you more vulnerable, right? Bullying, really, really common, all right? A lot of people get bullied around their weight, being teased or ridiculed for their size or their food choices. I have 3 little girls, right? And my oldest, Kaya, who's 10, when she was in kindergarten, she was bullied incredibly about her food. Now, my daughter, Kaya, has always been a little bit bigger, right? Like she was born at like almost 10 pounds. She's tall. She's a bigger girl. She's not like crazy overweight by any means. She's got a little bit of a stomach. She inherited from me. I apologize to her all the time, right? But she's not like obese by any means. She's just bigger, right? And in kindergarten, she started coming home every day without eating her lunch. Like she'd come home and her lunch was intact. And we're like, why aren't you eating your lunch? You got to eat your lunch, you know, like that's important. You got to eat. Otherwise you won't have energy, whatever. And she's like, oh, I'm just busy playing. Like I didn't want to eat. I want to play. And we let it go. It kept going for like 3 months. She'd come home with every day not eating her lunch. And we finally got it out of her that this little girl that I want to murder, her name's Addison, right? If you ever hear me going to jail, it's because I killed this kid. She's still around. She's like, now she's a 5th grade bully, but she was a kindergarten bully at the time. Addison, would tell my daughter, like, those are unhealthy foods and they're going to make you fat. So don't eat them. Those foods are going to make you fat. Don't eat them. Like every day teasing my daughter for the foods in her lunchbox, right? And I'm like, well, what's Addison eating that's so healthy? Right? I don't want to that carrots, right? 2 carrots maybe, right? Who knows, right? But she teased and bullied my daughter so much that my daughter wouldn't eat, right? And we had to like go to the teacher and make it this huge deal. I was like, I'll be waiting for Addison in the parking lot. Like I'm gonna find, you know, like I was ready to go to jail to kill this kid. Yeah, and then like Addison's in her class again this semester, like this year in 5th grade. That had a whole span of 5 years, not in the same class, back with her. She's bullying and teasing other kids. I have an Addison on my soccer team and I had to make sure it wasn't her or, oh, it would have been bad, you know? Like, I'm like, oh, I have access to her. I can kick a soccer ball in her face. I didn't say that, right? And you're going to run laps the whole practice. I'm going to kick balls in her. Actually really nice Addison. It's trying to change my mind on the name. But my daughter was bullied by this kid for years, right? And like bullying is so common. Like I feel like it's less than maybe generationally, a few like, you know, years back or the generation before. But I mean, just teased for food. When kids are teased for their appearance or what they eat, it affects them. Like my daughter for years, she would come home and be like, how do I get a flat stomach? You know, and like that would just break our heart. Like as parents, we're like, well, we can show you how to do sit-ups and stuff if you want, but only if you want that for you, not because other people are saying stuff, you know? And like my daughter now, she doesn't care. Now she eats whatever she wants, right? And like she got over it, but for that year, it wreaked havoc on her. And again, oh, I wanted to, like Addison, she said like, I wanted to insult everything about this kid. I'm like, well, she has ugly hair. You're like, what are you wearing? And I'm like, okay, be nice. She's 5, calm down, right? But as a parent, right, like claws can to defend. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like a normal lunch, like she'd have Lunchables in there, which I mean, granted, they're not the most. Yeah, it was nothing like abnormal. It's not like we packed her like Twinkies and Ho-Hos and like, you know, nothing but candy, right? I mean, she'd have like a fruit item and some chips and crackers, like a pretty, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I never saw what Addison was eating, but I can't imagine it was much better, right? Trying to let go of my hate of this child, right? But it hasn't happened yet, if you can't tell, right? I'll just get all heated thinking about her. Yeah, yeah.
He's from me when I was in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
My like best friend, we bring like a big like inside bag of Lay's every day to school.
Yeah.
Toffees and like just like all the like up.
Sure.
But like he's like the most popular kid.
Yeah.
So everyone's like,
hey, yeah, I want some of that,
yeah.
Right? Well, for sure.
You wasn't like no one did like.
Yeah. Right. I think it's just Addison, right? The name is cursed. Like I said, I have a nice Addison on my soccer team, but I glared at her for a while just in case it was the same one. I'm like, I wouldn't recognize her. It's been 5 years. Nice Addison. So we always talk about, is this the nice Addison or the mean Addison, right? We'll go all the way through high school. Yeah. 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 Yeah, there we go, right? And you're fine, you're safe, right? I won't generalize it beyond that. I'm just kidding. So, I mean, those interpersonal factors are huge, right? If you've been bullied or teased or have any kind of history of abuse, right? Or those things that we just mentioned, right? Those can really play a big role, along with that family culture. right? Really, really common. Like I mentioned, Kim had a gastric bypass surgery. My father-in-law had a gastric bypass surgery. My partner's sister had a gastric bypass surgery. Like that whole family, my partner's the only one with a stomach, right? Like with like a working stomach. And oftentimes when we go out to eat with them, it's disturbing. None of them can eat. They all like throw up when they eat because they have no stomach to put the food into. And, and like my partner will be like, they're all so thin and they're all obsessed with thinness. It's this family culture. I'm like, yeah, but you can actually enjoy your food and eat it. And you're not in the bathroom throwing up. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But it's just, there's these cultures that get created in families around weight and food and activity. And that can sometimes seep in as well. There are two more, but I just want to remind you of two things really quickly. And then we'll pick up and keep going on the other two next time. Don't forget that on Tuesday, right? And I'll remind you on Tuesday when I see you. That second part of the paper is due, so be working on it over the weekend. If you have questions, you can feel free to email me, or you can ask me right now if you want to take a minute to come and ask me. We do have our second exam on Thursday next week. So on Tuesday, we'll finish this up. We just have a slide or two left. And then we'll talk about chapter 10, which is pretty brief. It's only 2 disorders, but we'll talk about chapter 10. And then Thursday, we won't have class in person. It'll be the exam on Canvas. Okay, so just to kind of put that on your mind that it's coming up for next week. I think that is everything. If you have any questions, feel free to come ask me. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all on Tuesday. What's this?